Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today on the second Friday of January. Uh, I know the Kent County office did end up closing last Friday. It was still pretty bad getting out of my neighborhood, at least. And, I know a lot of the areas still hadn't been plowed because um, down in Sussex, we get taken care of by the facilities crew that takes care of the Lewis campus, and they were busy down there. So I don't even think they got up here until sometime on Friday. So hope everyone had a long weekend that was unexpected, and we all had to get back to work this week. I know the ag group was very busy with Ag Week. I think that went really well. I was down there 3 of the 4 days. Things looked like it was a good turnout, and I think all the presentations went off really well, and I heard good comments from a lot of people. So thank you to the ag group who was really put a lot of effort into that. I know some of those folks too were also at the Ag Industries dinners last night. So they were long week, late night. Now we're back on bright and early Friday morning. So thank you to everyone for that. I know the Hort group is up next with the Hort Expo coming up soon. So I know they're probably busy planning and preparing for that. I wanted to just point out we've got Allison Brayfield on the Zoom with us. She is the new business manager. So welcome, Allison. Thanks for being on. She's got her camera on for everyone to see what she looks like. And yep, you're unmuted if you want to say hello.
I'm muted. I'm here.
Oh, I can't hear you though.
You cannot hear me?
Nope, we're not hearing you. You might have to go through and test your audio. But we can try again in a few minutes. I know we can definitely see you, and I can see that you're trying to talk.
Okay.
So hello, thanks.
Hello.
And there is a chat box too if you wanted to try the chat. A lot of folks end up doing that. But so if you haven't met Allison in person, she's in Townsend Hall. So the next time you're over that way, please go ahead and stop in and say hello to meet her face to face.
Thank you.
So Kathleen can hear Allison.
Oh.
I can't. Oh, there we go. My microphone wasn't turned, my speaker wasn't turned up high enough. My apologies about that. So thanks. I'm glad other people told me that they can hear. Allison, do you want to say anything else?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good to be here.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming over with us, and thanks for being on this morning. And I see Michelle Rogers has just got on with us too. I know she had an 8 o'clock phone call. So I was just kind of going over a couple of the things, recapping the week. I also wanted to remind everyone that there is a doodle poll that's been out in the last couple of the Directors Weeklies and will be in today too for signing up for the story map training with Shane Brandt. Last I checked, we're having it on Wednesday, February 14th and Thursday, February 15th. It'll be repeated, so you don't have to go to both. It's just one or the other. It'll basically be full day. It'll be 2 classes offered, one session in the morning and then another one in the afternoon to teach you all about ArcGIS Online and doing story mapping. So just pick one of those 2 days. The Wednesday, the Valentine's Day, the 14th, had 5 of the 15 spots filled. So there's a lot of space left in there. And then on Thursday, it was about half filled with 8 out of the 15 spots filled. So I'm hoping we can get close to 15 on both of those days, because when I was asking for interest, I got a lot of feedback from people. So, we're asking Shane to come down. And at this point right now, we could maybe just compress it into one day if we don't get more people to sign up. So we're not taking up too much of his time. So I just encourage you, if you are interested and you have availability that day or the flexibility to change your schedule to come to one of those 2 sessions, please do so. And so with that, I was going to quickly go over some things that will set us up good, I believe, for our February and March 1st Fridays with Jennifer Daniels. It'll also help with some of the things we're asking you to do with the planning and reporting system this year. So I'm going to share my screen. And I've got this PowerPoint that I put together. So this is about defining our population. And this is something I was talking to Maria Papitas about a little bit. And the kind of the gist of this is the why is with our civil rights requirements for the USDA funds that we get, we're required to make sure that we are reaching a diverse group of people. And we have to do some effort to to look at our numbers and report and assess that data. So within our guidance, this is just a lot of data, a lot of text that I've copied and pasted right out of our civil rights guidance documents that are on our staff resources page. We say we want all of our research projects and activities to be done without regard for race, color, national origin, sex, disability, religion, age, veteran status, gender identity or expression, or sexual orientation, or other characteristics protected by the applicable law. And then to kind of the, oops, didn't mean to do that. I was trying to move my Zoom blocks. Within Goal 2 and Objective 3 of our guidance, that's where it talks about looking at our data. And so within Objective 3, it says we're going to keep that information using our reporting system, which is our planning and reporting system that we have now, and that the data will be collected, reviewed, and evaluated to determine parity and reasonable efforts. So with that word parity, if people haven't thought about this lately, that means we really want to have the people who are coming to our programs to match the population in which we're trying to reach. And so our goal is to have balanced membership and parity in all of our programs. And the guidance says that our parity is achieved when our club or group or participation, the membership matches the demographics of the population. So we go on to say, though, that we can consider our data to be balanced if we're at least reaching 75% of the non-majority members. So if they came from that region. So there was an example even given that I've copied and pasted for you here. So the example was if you have a club of 20 members and in the population that you're trying to serve, Blacks or African Americans make up 20% of that population, you would be exactly proportional if you had 4 Black or African American members. But we would consider it balanced if you had 3. So anything less than that, we would want you to try to do some work to increase your outreach to that community and try to increase representation on your group or your programs. So if you don't know where to go to get demographic data and information, our staff resources page does have this. The links had been broken and bad when I went to check a couple of times, but I've brought that to Christy's attention and she immediately fixed them. So these links are on the staff resources page now. Well, I can show you that. Let me try to click to this. So if you go to, say, Newcastle County, if you work strictly in Newcastle County, this is where you can look for your population information. And you could just go right here to this block right here on the page, looking at the breakdown of the demographics. There is other information on there also on this page. Got to get my Zoom again to get out of the way. There's some information from USDA. So if you are working with a specific group or sector within a geographic area, so for example, the agriculture community, there is some information that USDA has, and you're able to go and look. Most of this I have clicked around in here is on a statewide basis. If you try to get that race and gender and ethnicity information at the county level using the USDA stuff, it seems to not have much populated in there. So you would use statewide information. So we really would like folks to look at the demographic data for the area that you're trying to reach. If you are working in a school and there is that information available, and that's the complete area that you're trying to reach the population, you can use that. But for the most part, I think people will mostly be using the countywide or the statewide information. So then we want you to compare that to what you've reported into the planning and reporting system for 2017. So I pulled my summary information for what I reported. So it summarizes it for you here. This is everything that I did. You can, if you're in the planning and reporting system, scroll down and look at each of your program areas. So if you wanted to look at just what you do for, say nutrition and health, or if you want to just look at what you do for environmental impacts, go and look at those areas themselves. And of course, if you want to just look at individual programs or events that you've held, that data, you've put that in there. So you can, if you want to just look at the entire year, you go to the year-to-date summary link that's on the left-hand side of the planning reporting system, and this is what you'll see at the top of the page. So I then went on to calculate percentages. I aggregated mine into just the 3 categories that I've shown here in this table that just popped up, but you can be more specific. And then I pulled that information from the statewide data. So you can see I have some work to do to try to do more outreach to the Black and African American population, because I'm not near 23%. I'm only at 3%. So I would be considered balanced at 17%. So I have work to do. I have to go and show that I'm at least making a reasonable effort to reach that group. So what we want folks to do in their 2018 plans is to do this type of assessment right now. You know, it's very easy. You can do it quickly this afternoon or next week. You know, we are asking to have plans turned in by Monday. And look, if you have parity now, that's great. Keep up the good work. But if not, we want you to say what steps you're going to take in 2018 to try to bridge that gap. What you're going to do is then in your plan, you're going to go to edit inputs, where you go and you change the number of days that you spend in each plan area, and where you also copy and paste your Word document stuff, your detailed outputs. At the very bottom of that page is another box that says special intentions to reach underserved audiences. We want you to type in there just a few sentences what your plan is. So for me, I know that with this the innovation project that I'm involved with Dell State, what we're going to be doing with the community garden outreach is working with some communities in Dover. So that's something that I'm really hoping will help me improve my numbers and reach more Black and African Americans with my water quality and my environmental impact work. So I'm going to add that to my plan for this year. Then as I go in and I do my outputs, once my plan's approved and I'm reporting throughout the year, I can then add that information in my output reports, what I've done to try to reach those audiences. So I hope that makes sense for folks. I think this will also help us if you don't have a lot of good ideas with how you're going to bridge that gap if you need to do that. Jennifer Daniels will be giving us a First Friday webinar in February on the 2nd. About recruiting diverse applicants and participants. So if you need to, after that presentation, if you get a lot of great ideas from her, you want to add something else into your plan, you let me know and I can open it up for you to make an edit, and then we'll close it up again for you afterwards. I really think, excuse me, that she's going to be able to help us get some good ideas and try to make some way towards making sure we're having a diverse participation. And then she'll be back in March to talk to us about managing then diverse teams. So once you get a diverse team, how do you manage them in a really good and effective way? So that's all I had on that. If there are questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have anything they can unmute themselves for talking about this topic, or type something into the chat box? Certainly if you have questions about how to put something into the planning reporting system, you can always follow up with me. I'll be around all day today. Did I hear somebody say something?
Yes, I direct from, well, I've got a lot of feedback here. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes, is Sue?
Yes, it is. I direct a program that is very targeted to a specific audience. We're over committed or over populated in the African American community. Is this something that I need to be concerned about and really concentrate more on primarily the white? And I know we have work to do in the Hispanic, which we're trying to do.
So that's a good question. So in your case, you're kind of overachieving with having the underrepresented groups represented at your programs.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure, Michelle, do you have a response to that? I think it probably depends on the purpose of your program. If that's what you're trying to achieve, that's probably good. but if you're looking at the parity numbers, yeah, you would be low on the white population.
I think it's good to be aware of it, and then I think it does say, you know, how do we reach the other audiences, and what may we need to do, and it's always a balance of our having representation and meeting all audiences. So yes, you know, it's great from a civil rights perspective from the underrepresented, but now we have another group that's underrepresented, so equally so, we would want to reach out and try and add some balance to that. So again, it's just like any other program, we try and make sure we have that balance and parity of a diverse audience, whatever that audience is. So it's going to be less worrisome maybe to an audit, but I think for us in terms of reaching what the community is, if we're not reaching that community, whatever race that is, we want to try and reach that audience. So Sue, I think it's a worthwhile question to consider, and what might we do differently that or offer this that might help provide greater balance as a worthwhile conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right. Are there any other questions on this topic of parity and population? Okay, so hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. She's going to talk to us about an initiative we're going to be doing here in 2018 with a stakeholder needs assessment. So we've had our planning reporting system and the plan of work that we've been using we're going into our 5th year. So it's time to really look at it and see if it is what we should be doing in meeting the stakeholder needs.
Well, thanks, Jen, and thanks for your leadership and getting First Fridays together, and appreciate that and what's lined up for that, and value everybody also tuning in. I was going to encourage you, those of you who are at your desk, I know not everyone is and not everybody's planning on that, but those of you who are at your desk and have your video, I was going to encourage you to turn it on, because then Allison can see who you are. Allison Brayfield has a chance to see you and to get to know who you are. So if you don't mind, if you're at your desk and have your video available, if you turn that on, and then Allison will have a chance to get to know you. In terms of who are people out in the state if she's just getting started. So do that if you can, and if you don't mind, that'd be super for her. I also want to say it's been, I know that we have a lot of folks that are coming off the Ag Week and have had a highly intense week with Ag Week and numerous presentations this week. And from my day there yesterday, it sounds like it's just been a really great week, and I appreciate all the efforts that go into that very intensive week, and all of you who work so well as a team to make that happen, and support each other in that, both individually and as a group in terms of the planning and the implementation of that. So from faculty, staff, specialists, across the board, it takes all of you, and just a special thanks for making that week happen, another successful week. And I think our clientele just really, really appreciate that effort. So so thanks very much. It all culminated last night in the Ag Industry Banquet, and it was a pleasure that Provost Robin Morgan came down and saw Ag Day as it is now, and how much it's changed since she was last there, and then represented University of Delaware among our stakeholders as well. So appreciated the chance to have her come and be a part of that. And I'm still working at having the president get there, but it is very helpful for us to have Robin in the president's office to speak to Cooperative Extension. So this year I'll continue to find opportunities to invite the president, and I just really want to get him out to an extension program. And if I call you and say I've got an opportunity here, we'll hopefully be able to have him out to any one of our programs to see what Cooperative Extension is about. So still working on that. As Jen mentioned, my topic today in presenting this is about our needs assessment, and I'm going to go share my screen, and I think I can get this right here to the needs assessment and see if that comes up. Here we go. Only you're not seeing it as a slide, are you? Let me get to there. So that provides a little bit of background. Thank you all who've turned on your cameras, and Allison, you can scroll down and see who's who and get a feel for that, so thanks. So what this is about, and I've been here, I'm in my 6th year, and as you recall, soon after my getting in my 1st year here, we did this plan of work piece that we did, and we developed our goals and what things we wanted to accomplish and the inputs and outputs that were going to be a part of that. And we've been working on that ever since, and we got our planning reporting system set up, and we've been working in this. Well, one of the things that we didn't do at that time, because I felt we just had so much to do, but that's generally a part of that plan of work design, is visiting with our stakeholders about what should be in that plan. And we did that to some extent, that you had advisory committees and people that you talked to, but we didn't do it in any kind of formalized way. And when I talked among the leadership team, it's been quite some time since we've actually formally done this in Delaware. Quite some time since we've actually specifically done this. And technically, we're supposed to do this every 5 years. And the federal government does request of us to provide every year how we've gotten stakeholder input. So in a routine way, every year when I send in that report April 1st, I say we have advisory committee meetings that are functioning, we've done this, we've done that, the routine things we do. But they do have an expectation that we have a specific look at this 5 years in terms of a statewide process. It is both a research and an extension plan of work. So not only are we asked to do this in extension, but also in the research side of this. And in our state, we have chosen to do this as a combined state. And I say we have chosen, we were required to do this together with Del State in the past. And just this year, they've moved to states being able to select whether or not the 1890s and 1862s submit their plan together. We have chosen, and we being the Dean's Office and Del State's leadership group at the college, have chosen that we would continue to do a combined plan of work, that in our size state, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do the two. And so we have selected to continue to do that. And one of the rationale and the reasons for this needs assessment is often when we talk about cooperative extension, we talk about we're a grassroots organization, that we do programming based on what the community need is. And we get that information and we do that. And so this is one of the ways that we're very specific about being sure that the whole direction of our plan is based on community and community need and what they say. It's a formal approach versus our independent individual advisory committees that we're getting all the time. So this is a more forward approach. It is outward looking and it is focused on the next 5 years is how we need to do this plan of work with that. And as I said, we haven't really done this since my arrival, so we need to take a step back and look at this, and we don't have any documents to build on that we've done in any recent years. So we have, and the we here is the leadership team, along with, I've had conversations with both the Dean and Eric Womack, our Associate Dean of Research, because this is a combined plan and how we have to have this fit into the college plan. So among our conversation, we developed a proposal and it's been bought into at the highest level of the college in terms of how we'll do this. And I have a meeting set up now with Del State. I saw some of those folks last night at the banquet. We talked about this preliminarily as well, about bringing them on board with how we go about doing this. But we're focusing this on what I call a two-prong approach. We have our internal audience, who I'm defining as the people that we work with now, our existing stakeholders, the people we meet with, the people that come to our programs now, that know who we are, know what we do. And so that's our internal audience. And I think we do a fairly good job of getting feedback from them and working with advisory committees and doing that. But this is their formal time for them to look at the whole piece and to provide input into it. And I'm proposing that this part would be conducted, this part of the needs assessment would be conducted by those of you who have relationships with these stakeholders, that you would be the ones that would conduct this input with that. And I'll give a little more detail about that later. And then the second prong is an external focus. This is getting information from those who are not currently our stakeholders. But if we serve all of Delaware, what do other people who are currently not our stakeholders but might be our stakeholders really think are the important things that Extension should be focused on? We are as much their resource as we are for those that we're currently serving. And so we're proposing a phone or a Qualtrics survey that would happen with our non-stakeholders, and proposing that we would, and Jen and I have had some conversation with Steve Paquet, who is in the Institute of Public Administration and actually has his own center within that. And they routinely do these phone surveys or Qualtrics surveys with people across the state on various issues. They're contracted out by different organizations to do this kind of work with external stakeholders. And so we've talked to them, and we have a preliminary agreement that we would do some contract work with them to help us get this external stakeholders, the part that's difficult for us to do, and that they would do some of that work to get that external piece. So that's the two-prong approach. And so you will be involved in one piece, and then we will add that to this additional data. But we'll also be able to sort the data by these two types of audiences that we have. So here's the process we're planning to use. Jen will be providing overall leadership for this assessment area and where we're moving forward. And the first step is to create a set of questions and to work on that through a small group. We do have, and we've prepared through the late last year, obtaining needs assessments that have been done by other states. And there's a lot of similarity in that. We have one from Mississippi. We also have one from the ag side that was recently done in Maryland. So we have some samples of what's been done in needs assessment. And we know the kinds of questions we've asked here before. And so we've asked for a team of agents, and I didn't update my slide here, but we are thankful that Jared Miller, Gina Chris, Tracy Wooten, and Karen Johnston are going to serve on this committee. And their role is by the end of the month to have looked at these other samples, see what's been out there, and then create what our questionnaire might be for the state of Delaware and what kinds of things we want to look at, having these samples to work from, and then just creating it. I don't think it's going to be complex. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. It's a big picture visioning thing. It's you know, what are the major topics that we should be focused on in the next 5 years? That's really, what are the major programs that we should be focused on that our stakeholders say that they want us to doing? That's really the focus of what we're doing here. It can be extremely complex, and you can go through I've been in some states where we've done this, you know, intensive 1 year thing, and other places where where we're viewing this is, you know, we're going to get out there with some big picture questions and ask this and get this data back and take a look at it. So then, so we'll develop some of those questions for us to use internally. Then we're going to use those questions that are developed by our team to meet with the Institute of Public Administration, the folks that are there, and modify in whatever way we need to for that external audience. But we're hoping to keep it very, very similar so that we can compile that data of both our internal and our external. So it'll likely be very similar, but they might help us reframe the questions that in a better way for the survey, because that's what they do, that's their expertise. So we would look for them for some guidance about our questions. And then of course we'll need to go through the IRB process, and Jen will take leadership for that to get that approval for what we're doing. And then we're hoping to have all of this back to all of you and by mid to end of February here, and we're going to ask each of you in your role as an agent at a minimum to visit with 10 stakeholders. For every agent or specialist that has an extension appointment, we're saying meet with 10 stakeholders between the end of February and May. So this can be in any format that it wants to be, that you'd want it to be. So this could be where you already have an advisory meeting and you just put this on the agenda and ask them to complete it. It could be, we're going to try and set this up as a Qualtrics thing. It could be that you send it out to 10 individuals and ask them to to complete this. You send it out to 20 and get 10 people who complete it in the Qualtrics format. It could be that you are already meeting with a group that is representative of a particular program area, and you take 10 minutes at the end of the meeting to have a focus group kind of discussion where you take the feedback back from them. They don't get any questionnaire. You ask them the questions, and you send the response in, put it into the system, and send the response. So it's very open in terms of how you conduct it. But I think it's probably reasonable that each of you can do a minimum of 10. Are you limited to 10? Absolutely not. The more data, the more solid, the solid basis for our outcomes. So you're not limited to 10, but we're going to ask if we have 40 FTEs in extension, if we had everybody do 10, we'd have at least 400 respondents in Delaware, and I think that would be a reasonable place for us to start in terms of having truly done our needs assessment. So you'll have a variety of ways you can do it. You'll have it in print. We'll have it in Qualtrics. You can do a focus group discussion, enter the data. You can do it with people. So start thinking about the meetings you have between now and May. Who are those folks, or how you're in contact with folks that you can get in touch with them and do this work. Then we're going to be asking our contract with the Institute of Public Administration to do some of the analysis of the data, to do some of the summarizing the data and helping us do some interpretation of that data. And they will, while we're doing our work with the internal, we'll be working with them, and they're going to do the external. So at the end of May, we're going to have completed gathering data, and then get that summarized by early June. We'd have that. And then we'll be asking, as we did 5 years ago, for our program leaders from both of the institutions, the state and us, to come together and look at that data and say, how does that relate to our plan of work? What changes might we want to make? And based on my experience, over 30 years of experience of doing this needs assessment data, it's not likely that we're going to have a major shift in our plan of work. I mean, we're always going to do sustainable agriculture. We're always going to have some focus on environment. We're always going to have some focus on positive youth development. We may, however, change some of the sub things that we focus on within that, and some of the specific target areas that we want to have on what we're doing. We might change our indicators and our outcomes of what we want to measure and what we're doing. So I'm not saying we won't change our plan of work. It's certainly, this is the opportunity to take a look at this. I don't anticipate this as a major throwing out of everything that we have and starting anew. I don't anticipate that. I see it more of looking at what we have and what might we change within that. So I don't want anybody to feel like we're throwing everything we've done out. We're not, but we are going to take a look and see. And the last time we did this, we didn't have the stakeholder input necessarily, so that may further inform how we develop this. So the leadership team of program leaders will be involved in working on that through the summer, and then we need to by the end of summer, have our revised plan of work and have this ready to go, so that Jen and others can work on putting this into the system. So when you do your planning for 2019, it's in the system with the new indicators, the new information, so we can doing that. And I also hope that we will, my plan is that we would take this outcome of this needs assessment data, and we'll develop some infographics with that, so that when you're working with particular audiences and you're doing some planning, or when we're writing some grants, that we have evidence that we can say, this is an issue as indicated by our stakeholders in our state, and so you'd have the information you need to put in the rationale for a grant proposal. You might have it as something that we put in place as you go to meet with a new agency or organization about why we should work with them, that the stakeholders have said this is important. So this becomes the rationale or the situation statement that we use for our various forms in terms of developing partnerships, in terms of grant writing, in terms of all kinds of things that we do. And we hope to get some infographics that make that easy for you to go back and share with the people that you asked to provide input. We're going to have something to share back with them, not a 15-page report, but maybe a 1-page infographic. Thanks for taking part in our needs assessment. Here's what we've learned from the process. And so you'll have something to give back to those who participated with us. I've talked a little bit about the time frame as I went through that, but here's what we're really working on. We want this team to get right to work, and Jen will work with you in getting you together and working on this, by the end of the month, getting these questions developed, working with the Institute of Public Administration in early February. This is very aggressive schedule here. I can say by the end of February, I really hope we'll have this all developed, but doing what we need to get it ready and out to you by the end of February, that you have it to work on. And then we'd have from February, the end of February through May 15th that we gather the data. So again, if you can just identify now when you might be wanting to incorporate that within that time frame of when we'll have the information to you. Then we're looking to compile that data by the end of May and begin our plan of work discussion. And likely this will come back to your individual teams. So as the program leaders are working on this, they'll probably bring it back and say, this is what we're thinking, this is what the data told us, here's how it might impact the plan. You know, we might have some of our teams doing some work on this based on what we see there. And then by August, we'd like to have the framing of our new plan of work and what indicators and outcomes we have. We do have to send this to NIFA, who's the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. That's our federal partner who we're funded through, and they have to approve of our plan. And so technically it's due in April. We're going to ask for an extension. The dean will do this on our behalf. We'll ask for an extension instead of submitting it April 1, which we cannot by this time frame. We would have had to start before now. We're going to ask for an extension to have that accepted in August with that. And then in December, Jen will work with our LIMPER system to roll it over so that in December the new plan will be in there for your planning purposes for 2019. And then in January, a year from now, you'll have the new plan to work from. And hopefully in building into this will be things that you as teams have been adjusting and changing from what we currently have to what fits here. So that's the time frame that we're working in. So I know this is a major task. I think when each of us takes a small piece of this, it doesn't have to be super major and a major impact of your time. I don't anticipate any of you that are not involved in the leadership team having to spend more than a day or two maximum trying to get this data and get it inserted into the system. So I don't see this as a major step on top of your existing work, but I do see you needing to plan to incorporate it into the opportunities you have to meet with folks and providing that data. And it is my expectation that everyone will at least work with 10 folks to do this. So I'll stop there and stop sharing my screen and just turn it over for questions that you have, things that you're thinking about as you hear this, suggestions that you have, how we go about doing this that would make this simpler for you and your work. Please feel free just to unmute and to step in. Any questions at this point? Or suggestions? Comments about is this doable? Within that, or I really welcome if you go either provide verbally or in the chat pod, just in hearing this, who you might do this with. Could we have you just type in the chat pod as you hear about this? What groups or how do you think you might do this? Do you think you might do it focus group? Do you think you might do this through when you're meeting with people? How do you anticipate that you might do this that would help us as we develop this? What's your preferred method that you might do this with individuals? And just give you a minute to, you're not committed to this. We're just trying to get a feel for this so that would help us guide this in the development.
So Kathleen had just put a message into the chat asking for clarification. The same survey will be used for internal and external stakeholders.
Thanks for raising that, Jen. It's helpful. At this point, that is our plan so that we can compile the data. We might have to generate the questions or format in a different way for people who don't know us. There would be some things that we might need to add. We might have to add some things about our mission and purposes and those kinds of things that are added to it. And then we will talk to them about what format it will be in. They do phone servers regularly, whether we'll do the Qualtrics, what we'll do. But it's my intention that they'll be similar so we can combine the data.
So I know, to Tracy and Gina, I think I had seen that she was into it. I don't think I've seen Jared or Karen Johnson's names. I've been getting a couple emails from Tracy. I know she's been thinking about this, and she had been asking about the schedule, so hopefully all of her questions have been answered for that. But certainly if either of them have any thoughts or questions now, they can chime in. I will be getting an email out to that group with our next steps, so we'll get rolling on this right away.
Yeah.
I see Sydney, Nancy, a couple people have put some comments into the chat.
Yeah, groups. And Emily, you're asking whether our current clientele will be available as a Qualtrics survey. Yes, that's our intention. And so we need to think about, for example, if it's your audience that you normally work with, Emily. So for example, would you ask the whole questionnaire or just the ag questions to your audience? And we have to work through some of the logistics. Would we ask your group just to answer the ag side of things? And yet there's so much integration of our program. When we talk about food safety, where do we put that? Do we put that under the ag side? Do we put it under? So I will have to see how these questions look at. It might be that everybody does the whole questionnaire, but yes, our intention is that we will develop in Qualtrics and can just give you the URL for that Qualtrics, and you can send it out to people to do that. Then I just ask you to monitor that to the best that we can. We'll have to see how we can set that up to know who has responded. We won't know who in a Qualtrics because it's anonymous, but making sure we're getting the response we need from that. But good question, and yes, we do plan to make it available in Qualtrics. Doug said, it can be accomplished during any of our many meetings that we have with stakeholders, and that's absolutely right. We do want it to be as representative as we can. This is another place for our civil rights that we have to be intentional about thinking about, are we reaching all of our audience of our stakeholders? So we might have to be intentional about reaching some of those more difficult to reach audiences that are part of our program area and part of our stakeholders. Nancy is saying we will need it available in different languages. So Spanish, I'm sure, is one. Getting that. What else do we need it in terms of, this is a great time for you to tell us our...
Well, I know Kathleen has done some programs in Chinese, so that might be French, Creole, Vietnamese, Burmese. We'll have to look into that. That's a good point. And Doug, he had added, interested in the youth voice also?
Absolutely, absolutely. A youth serving organization, we certainly need to have the youth voice in this. And especially when we talk about 5 years out,
some of those youth will be adults.
This is our future audience here, and what are they telling us about what we should be doing? So we'll need to look at that. This is helpful comments.
Right.
Anything else people are thinking about that would make this easier for you, or that's going to be critical to your the ability to deliver this?
So I think a couple of people had put stuff in right away that I had gotten scrolled up, so I had to scroll up to look at it. Sydney had said she could send this out through her Nutrient Management Continuing Education list. And I think there's probably some people who have lists like that that could certainly be shared within a Qualtrics type of fashion. And then a lot of other folks were just kind of listing the specific types of programs and partners that they work with.
Great. And Nancy has just mentioned we can push this through our social media. So yes, that's another way we'll need to get work through in terms of our process. Just some really good thoughts here as we work on this. Tracy's commenting about the new photo release in these same languages, and yes, we have some meetings coming up about this, our videos and the photo releases and the new requirements from communications. I think many of you are aware through the Directors Weekly that Jen put out last week that communications, Central Communications for the university has set up some new standards and requirements about both video content, just any visual content that we have, some standards about that, being sure we have photo releases. 4-H has long been doing this, so nothing new to 4-H in terms of these photo releases, but for all of us having those releases when we have people's identifiable individuals in that. And also some, they're trying to establish some basic marketing and marks, logo kind of things that are in all our visual things, so it's similar across that, and that's really a good thing for us. We're trying to do that within Extension as well. We haven't gotten very far down that road, but it's a similar kind of thing for the university. The good news for all of us is that Katie O'Connell is back, and she's providing some leadership with this. Many of you know Katie from when she was our communication manager about 4 or 5 years ago, and she is working with Central Communications now on a job that's a liaison to all the colleges, and so there's somebody who knows us and understands this, and I think will help interpret this in a way that's useful. And I will be meeting with her and some others in some upcoming weeks to get that done. So good comment here, and it does tie into the need in our communications that we'll have some things changing about that. So a good comment.
Well, good. So I'm going to ask Allie Connor to capture the chat box for us. So those were good things. We'll add that to our folder on the stakeholder needs assessment so we can make sure we follow up on all of the comments and ideas that have come in.
Yeah. This is so helpful. That's what I love about these First Fridays when we do this, and we can get the feedback from you to help us make things better. So that's really helpful. Thank you. And continue to provide those comments. Send an email, make a phone call. As you can see, with the fast-moving progress and process that we need to do here to get this to you, so you have the most time to implement it. That's our biggest push at the moment, and still not to be so delayed that we can't get it into our system and ready to use for next year. So it's kind of a balance of getting what we need, getting what data we can need and can get, and building it into the time frame that Federal can approve it, and we can build it into our system and move forward. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. So while we're on the line, is there any other general questions, stump the director kind of questions that Jen and I can answer? Other things that are on your mind that you just want to ask about while we're all connected this morning? Anything at all that you want to just ask about while we're connected? I had some time in the car with Provost Morgan yesterday, and I did ask if we've hired a new HR manager, and we have not. There is a new IT person centrally that's been put in place most recently, so that's happening. We are also in budget conversations across the university. We're working at this interim time period when we are no longer using responsibility-based budgeting, but we haven't set up the new budget model, and I'm on a university-wide committee that's looking at people who are funded in other ways. So we're one of the other ways of funding, and so I'm on a committee that meets weekly to look at the budget process from that standpoint. So I'm not sure when this process ends. I guess when we get done our work, we'll have a new budget model, but that's in process from the university level with that. The other thing that's a big picture thing, and many of you should have gotten an email, and I hope that you did. We had a conversation yesterday about how this went out, but Dean Rigger is up for his 5-year administrative review, and that will be happening this spring as well. So we will have opportunity for input into that, but that'll also be happening sometime this spring, where we'll have it. I'm sure it'll be in the form of a question for us to respond to with that. Well, Jen, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I think we've wrapped things up. I do want to say, just in passing, that I will be out of the country with Lead Delaware starting on Sunday. Several of us, Tara, Evie, Dan Severson, Michelle Wofford, who are Lead Fellows, and I've been providing some project director for our LEAD program for the last 2 years, and this is our culminating activity. So I'm headed to Argentina. When I looked last night at 8 o'clock, it was 88 degrees at 8 o'clock in Argentina, where one place where we'll be. So I'm trying to find the things in my wardrobe that have been stacked away that I can survive the heat wave of Argentina for a few weeks. But look forward to learning about agriculture in another country. We'll be visiting both wine and olive processing areas and going to University of Catholic, Cordoba, where we are establishing a relationship with our college and spending time on their research and extension farms. They have 2 there that we'll be visiting, and then ending up in Buenos Aires with meeting with diplomatic and agricultural related administrative folks. I think there's a tango lesson in there somewhere too. So don't ask me to demonstrate that when I get back. We will not be having a First Friday on tango lessons, but Michelle Wofford maybe want to pull that one off. So, or maybe Dan Severson, I don't know. So, anyway, so I'll be out of country for about 10 days, but reachable by phone and email. We're about 2 hours ahead when we're in Argentina. Not about, we are 2 hours ahead in Argentina. So a little bit ahead. Well, thank you all for all you do every day, each and every day. Welcome Allison Brayfield to your first Friday. And we're delighted to have you on board. She's quickly learning our systems and our processes and brings her experience to that. And we'll look forward to being in touch with you next month and see you in the meantime. Thanks, everyone.
Safe travels, LEAD team. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.